Dear Lilith, just so you know, this story is still a bit raw, and I'm sort of having a hard time sharing it. My fur baby, Petey, was attacked 2 weeks ago by a hideous creature. I saw it with my own eyes and reported it to my town's animal control, but they're not doing anything about it. Petey is a rescued pit bull and is the sweetest baby. He would never be aggressive unless he thought someone was threatening me, and that's how he got himself into this mess. I live in Locust, North Carolina, and we have a lot of woods here. Even though I'm a woman in my 40s living alone, I was never afraid at night because Petey would always let me know if anything strange was going on anywhere near the house. I don't believe in those electric fence things, and I don't tie my animals up by their necks, so sometimes when he needed to go outside to do his business, I'd just let him out in the yard and stand by the door and watch him. This was never a problem for us. My property has a stretch of woods in the backyard that goes on for quite a bit, but Petey was well trained, and he would always come right in when I whistled. So 2 weeks ago, when I was watching him from the screen door and I saw him go into the woods, I was really surprised when I whistled, and he didn't come right back. I was only wearing my bedroom slippers at the time because I work from home, so I had to go back into the house and put on some shoes before I went after him. I buy him these special real meat treats that he loves, so I grabbed a few of those and put them in my pocket on the way out the door. I walked through the woods for maybe 5 minutes calling his name and clapping my hands and didn't see any sign of him, and I was really getting worried. So I stopped for a minute and listened. Maybe it was because of me walking through there, but it seemed to me that the forest was unnaturally still. No birds or anything. Even after I was quiet for a few minutes, they didn't start back up. It kind of got me a little wary. I went a little way further and called his name some more. All at once, I saw something ahead of me in the brush. There was this creature that looked like a wolf, only bigger. We have coyotes around here, but no wolves, so I was squinting at it, trying to figure out if it was just a big dog. Coyotes aren't very big. It was kind of far away, and down on all fours at that moment, so I had no reason to think it was anything supernatural. I've always been told, don't act like your prey if you see something in the woods, so I acted big, so to speak, and yelled at it, "Go on, get out of here." Unfortunately, I didn't scare it one bit. Instead, it turned and looked at me, dead on, locking eyes with me. The hair on the back of my neck rose when I saw that thing's face. It had the most sinister yellow eyes, glowing like a deer's eyes do in the headlights. Its face looked off for a regular dog or even a wolf, too. The jaw was especially large and the ears seemed taller. But those eyes, man, that was the really freaky part. I couldn't look away. The beast made a low, growling sound and my blood just froze in my veins. All those brave ideas about yelling so you don't look like prey just went out of my head in an instant. I was just paralyzed with fear. I could barely breathe, and I'm sure I was giving off some kind of fear scent that it was picking up on. The creature sniffed the air then, keeping its eyes on me, but raising its muzzle to scent the air, and I then realized it could also probably smell those special dog treats. Talk about appearing as prey. Right then, the thing was certainly smelling the meat in my pocket. My ears started ringing, and my heart was hammering like it was trying to pound right out of my chest. I just slowly backed up a step, and then another one, not sure of what else to do. All at once, it rose up on its hind legs. I couldn't believe my eyes. It stood up, crouched over a little, but up on 2 feet, and it must have been 7 feet tall. It roared just like a grizzly bear, not like a dog or a wolf, just this enraged roar, and leapt toward me. I screamed at the top of my lungs and ran, knowing this thing was going to kill me. I hadn't gone very far when all of a sudden I heard Petey barking, and I turned around to look. Petey came racing out of the woods and launched himself at the beast. I screamed, "No!" watching, totally horrified, as he clamped down on the creature's side. He hung there the way pit bulls will, just suspended halfway up the thing by the strength of his jaw, swinging. That monster just swiped at him, roaring, and I saw its claws scrape across my poor Petey's side. I know I sound like a coward, but I was no match for this creature. I turned and ran, whistling for Pete and hoping he would heed all his training and follow me. I ran all the way home and only looked back once I reached the door. Thank God Petey was right behind me and we both jumped through the door, locked it, and I immediately called 911. I said there was some really big wild animal in the woods behind my house and that it tried to attack me and that it got hold of my dog. Animal control came out, arriving in about a half hour. I had spent that whole time sobbing my eyes out, knowing that we had just narrowly escaped being killed. I saw one of the officers arrive and start to head out with that stick thing with the loop on the end, and I told him, "That is not going to do it, mister. You need way more than that." He told me to wait in the house. They were gone about 15 or 20 minutes, which didn't seem like enough time at all, and they arrived back with basically no information. I remember wondering if they had just gone out looking for show and didn't really expect to find anything. They didn't find the creature, and the one officer insisted it was just another dog that had fought with him. Nothing I said could convince them it was a 7-foot-tall creature that was walking upright. It was not a dog. But the more I tried to explain myself, the more I realized I looked like a crazy woman, trying to tell them about a monster amid my shaking and being unable to really get the words out clearly. Who knew what they thought of me? For many weeks after that, Petey and I didn't leave each other's side. I'm not sure who needed who more, but I'm guessing the need was pretty equal at that point. Let's just hope we never have to deal with that again. I just want to say how much of a relief it has been to listen to your channel. I feel so much more relaxed and I don't feel insane. I will be 100% honest though. That doesn't mean I am relaxed enough to ever explore any mountain, cave, or even just wilderness again. Like ever. Sometimes, I don't even want to leave my house based on what I have seen. My family thinks I'm nutty, my friends think I am being ridiculous for attention, and the police. They literally told me that I needed to think of a better prank and hire a therapist. I'll tell you exactly what I have seen. I'm sure you will believe me. There needs to be awareness out there, like everywhere. Anyways, here goes. I traveled about 2.5 hours from my home to do some exploring in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I'm not big on hiking or whatever, but I recently went through a breakup. I just wanted some fresh air and maybe even some nice nature pics to post on Instagram. A nice adventure, I suppose. I parked and just started wandering. I didn't follow any specific path, I created my own. My phone was set to track my path so that I wouldn't get lost. Technology is great. As I was wandering, I got some pretty nice pics of some gigantic trees, some cool-looking spider webs, and even a little snake. I was really enjoying myself, making my own way, and just breathing. I had been going for almost 2 hours when I saw a large hole in one of the mountain walls. It wasn't too far from me, and it was a manageable climb. When I got to the hole, I stuck my head in and it was so dark. So I turned on my phone's flashlight, and that's when I realized this was a cave. I got a little carried away, thinking about how I had discovered a cave, wondering if anyone else had ever been here. It was exciting. Of course, I ducked down and walked in. I went in a few feet. I was being super careful, but I could see a smooth rock floor beneath me. I felt safe, so I kept walking forward, following the light from my flashlight, taking a picture here and there. I was maybe 15 or 16 feet in when I realized I was in a cavern, a cave room. There were a few openings in the walls surrounding the cavern. I picked the closest one to me and looked in. It was another tunnel. I could tell it was big enough to walk through, so I stepped through the opening and carefully walked a few more feet. I heard skittering. I stopped walking, thinking maybe I had kicked something. I looked all around on the ground and saw nothing. I heard skittering again. When I raised my phone up to look ahead of me, I saw a person, only like not a person. It was fully nude and looked really malnourished. It was crouched down on its hands and feet about 4 feet in front of me. It was so pale, like maybe it had never been in the sun. Its face was sunken in, and I could clearly see its cheekbones. It had all black eyes, not just the pupils like us, but all black. Between its hands on the ground was a half-eaten rabbit. I don't want to get too detailed because some people may have weak stomachs. I honestly thought I might hurl. I heard the skittering sound again and realized that it was making that noise. I don't know how I knew, but it was calling for its friends. Or family. Back up. I don't know. But it was trying to communicate and not with me. I moved back towards the way I came, but I kept my flashlight on it. It didn't seem to like the light too much. It didn't even try to move towards me at all. I was able to get back through the hole. I took a quick look around and didn't see anything else. I ran for my life back the way I came. I could hear skittering and it was getting closer and louder. There had to be more than one. I felt like that rabbit, like I was being hunted. I was able to see the light from the original opening when I tripped. I dropped my phone and I'm not even gonna lie. I didn't even try to pick it up. I got right on up and got out of that hole. I ran down that mountain. I was panting so hard, but my adrenaline would not let me stop. I only stopped when I was sure nothing had followed me. I realized I had no phone and no idea where I was. Honestly, I was just happy to be alive. I did eventually find a trail and managed to make it back to my car. I went to the local police station, which was pointless. They wouldn't take me seriously, so I just drove home. I cried and screamed so much on the drive. When I got home, I checked my phone's location. When I used the satellite feature, all I could see was a heavily wooded area, no cave mouth. The last time I checked the location of my phone, it had moved over a mile away from the original place I dropped it. It only had about 3% battery left, so I'm sure it has long died. That's what happened. I feel like I could have been eaten. I am so lucky that I didn't freeze up. I honestly wish I had taken a picture when I first saw that pale person. I didn't even think about it. All of my other pictures uploaded to the cloud. Anyways, please guys, don't go into any unexplored caves. I mean, even caves that have been explored are probably dangerous. I know I wouldn't go in one. I'll never forget that day. It was September, and the leaves were just starting to turn those bright autumn colors. I was in Parke County, Indiana. It's famous for its old covered bridges, many of which were built in the late 1800s. I've always liked these old bridges. They have interesting stories too, so I wanted to see them in person. There are 31 of them in total. They're set among hills and little creeks, each one with its own story. Each bridge had its own character, something a history buff like me really appreciates. On that day, the sun was setting, turning the sky red and gold. I was walking along a trail, checking out the Mecca-covered bridge. One of the bridges that was built in the late 1800s. It was about a mile east of town, and it was the last on my list that day. It was peaceful, just the sound of leaves rustling and birds now and then. Looking at the bridge's peeling paint and old wood, I suddenly felt uneasy. Everything got really quiet, and even the wind stopped. I looked around, feeling a bit suspicious. Then something caught my eye, a glimpse of dark fur disappearing into the woods at the end of the bridge. I couldn't tell how big it was from that far, but it wasn't small, maybe as big as a bear. It seemed out of place. I don't think that it's common to see bears around here. I was curious, though, wondering if that's what I really saw, so I decided to check it out. As I got closer to where I saw it, my heart started beating faster. Even the air felt like it got darker and heavier around me. The smell in the woods changed too, a weird mix of burnt charcoal and something metallic. It was weird to say the least. I started hearing noises as I got closer. The noises were loud and they descended on the quiet woods like distant thunder, sending a flock of birds rocketing out of the trees above. There were growls and a chilling howl echoed. I should have run, but curiosity pulled me deeper into the woods along a trail, well, more of a rustic path through the trees that I had found at the end of the bridge. As I ventured deeper, it suddenly got colder, giving me the chills, even though it had been warm all day. I paused, I was sweating, and my heart was racing. There, between a cluster of trees about 50 feet away, in the fading light, I saw it. This dark and totally nightmarish thing. It had the appearance of a canine, extraordinarily large and unnerving, perched casually with an air of dominance. Hunched over, it still looked like it could tower over me if it stood up. It almost blended into the shadows of the undergrowth. It was all pretty scary, but its eyes freaked me out the most. They were like glowing coals in the dim light. Those eyes, glowing in the dark, seemed to pin me in place. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the creature blinked out of sight. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone, like a ghost. I was so scared. I couldn't move for what seemed like forever. My knees trembled under the weight of what I'd witnessed. I tried telling myself it was just a trick of the light, but deep down, I knew. After a while, I managed to get enough nerve to check out where it had been. I combed the forest floor for signs of its existence, but found nothing. No prints, no broken branches, nothing at all. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake off the encounter. I kept trying to rationalize it, pin it on fatigue, blame it on the low light, but every time I closed my eyes, I would see those burning red eyes. I couldn't stop thinking about those eyes, day or night. Had it been real, or was it a result of shadows playing tricks on my mind? Telling some locals wasn't the best idea. They laughed it off as a hellhound, some local legend. They called it a devil's dog, a phantom coated in dark fur with eyes that burned like coal. No physical traces were ever left behind, and the mere sighting of one was known to induce dread in the heart of the viewer. Listening to this, I couldn't help but feel a cold shiver creep along my spine. Were these just campfire stories to scare people, or was there something more to it? Could a creature like that really roam these forests, and was I the one to see it? To this date, I'm unsure of what I saw that evening in the woods. Maybe it was the hellhound. Maybe it was simply my mind playing tricks. Either way, I will never forget those vividly burning eyes. The feeling of being watched that evening is something I can't shake off. And ever since that day, despite my love for history and the rustic charm of the bridges, I haven't returned to Parke County. The memory of those ominous red eyes a deterrent too potent to overlook. In the middle of October, I got this urge to hit the trails up on Mount Rogers. There's something about the Appalachian Trail in Virginia that gets me, no matter the season. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea to walk at the crack of dawn, but for me it's peaceful to be on my own with everything so quiet. So there I was, early morning, tying my boots, filling up my thermos with strong coffee, and stepping out into the chilly air. The world was still sleeping. Even the birds hadn't started their singing. I dig that kind of quiet, when it feels like the whole world's waiting for something to start. Without the chatter of daily life coming at me from all directions, it allows me to relax. I was hiking up the lower parts of the mountain, my breath making little clouds in the cold. I love that feeling of being alone, the fog thick around me, the wet branches slapping against my jacket. I've been an early riser since I was a kid. About an hour in, the sky was just starting to get light, but the trees were just dark shapes in the fog, and somewhere far off, an owl was doing its thing, the sound kind of echoing around the silent woods. I didn't really notice at first, but the air was getting heavier, a weird kind of cold that didn't feel right for the time of year. Eventually, I would come to think that the fog seemed almost alive. I'd never felt anything like it, and there was this strange smell, faint but odd. It took me back to my uncle's old place during a storm, that damp, smoky, sulfur smell. Then I started hearing whispers bouncing around me in a language I didn't get, but it felt like it was actual words. Scarier still was that it felt like something was watching me. The whispers were all around, but I couldn't tell where exactly they were coming from. So now the quiet of the trail wasn't so comforting anymore. I realized just how alone I was out there. That's when things got really strange. The shadows in the fog, which I thought were trees, started moving weirdly, like people twisting around. I know the tricks that light can play when you're alone in the mist, and usually I can talk myself out of getting spooked. But then this sharp, muscular shape showed up, with the air around it all shaky, making the mist move around in these strange spirals. At first, I thought I was seeing things. The cold, the silence, the weird sounds. It was freaking me out, but I was still drawn in closer to see what was up. The fog thinned a bit as I inched along, and eventually I saw it clearer. No lie, it was like something out of a bad dream. This creature, part man, part something else, with muscles and all, tall, with these huge dark wings like from a scary movie. It didn't have horns or anything, but it had these massive claws, shining in the bit of moonlight that was left. And its eyes, they were something else. Bright red, glowing, lighting up the fog. I froze, couldn't breathe. The thing was silent for a bit, and all you could hear was the wind. I couldn't move. Then the thing tilted its head and let out this sound, a cross between a roar and a weird laugh, the kind that chills you to the bone in horror movies. That sound got me moving. I started backing up, slow, keeping my eyes on it, and just the same as it showed up, the creature started fading away into the fog. The last thing I saw was those glowing red eyes before it got dark again, with just a bit of sunrise now starting to come through. I stood there for what felt like forever, that creature's image stuck in my head, the smell of sulfur in the air, and my heart racing. I kept asking myself if it was for real, but it sure felt real considering the fear I was experiencing. It was like my instincts knew to put me into fight or flight mode. With a heavy breath and one last look at where that thing had been, I kept on walking. But this time, I had reversed myself and was getting the heck out of there. The birds had started their songs by then, acting like nothing had happened. For days after, I tried to figure out if I really saw a demon, or if my mind was playing tricks on me. But every time I shut my eyes, I see those red eyes. Makes me question if it was all in my head. Never happened again, though, and everything on Mount Rogers went back to normal from that day forward. But I can't stop thinking about that morning, trying to make sense of it, to find some kind of logic in it. Still haven't found any answers, though. If anyone out there has any suggestions, I'd love to hear them. My name is Sam, and I'm a park ranger here in the Smoky Mountains, where the trees tell stories older than the hills themselves. It's a place I thought I knew like the back of my hand, but there's one tale I've kept to myself until now. It began the day I decided to track down those old Appalachian trails, the ones that had slipped into legend, faded on maps, and faded from recent memory for most people. I remember that morning, clear as mountain air. The woods greeted me with their usual sounds, but as I ventured deeper, guided by a map as wrinkled as an old man's face, the forest quieted. It was the kind of hush that makes you think even the birds were afraid of something on the ground. I followed a path barely visible, reclaimed by roots and vines, when a chill shivered down my spine like a shadow passing over the sun. I turned, slow and steady, heart hammering against my ribs. I spun slowly, trying to get a good 360 view around me. 3/4 of the way around my spin, there it was. A creature, if you could call it that, with skin like charred bark, eyes smoldering like coals. It was just watching me, not moving, not making a sound. I've seen a lot in my time, creatures big and small, but nothing like this. It looked like something out of the old mountain tales my grandpa used to scare me with. I never believed him, not until that exact moment. Backing away, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was sizing me up, wondering just as I was, what move I'd make next. Maybe it was just curious. Maybe it was guarding something on this forgotten trail. I'll never know because I didn't stick around to find out. I turned and walked, then walked faster until I was nearly running. I just thought, keep it together, Sam. Nice and easy. All the while I expected to hear it following me, but there was nothing. Just my own footsteps pounding a frantic rhythm against the earth. When I finally broke free from the tree line, back to where the world was normal and people were safe, I couldn't help but laugh at the stupidity of scaring myself like that. I mean, there is no way that was real. Back at the station, I told a few of the other rangers. They laughed, thinking I was just spinning yarns or that I'd spooked myself, sort of how I was feeling. But truthfully, a part of me really feels that I saw what I saw. Days turned into weeks, and my dreams were haunted by visions of burning eyes looking at me in the dark. I kept thinking about that creature, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination running wild in the wilderness. But deep down, I knew better. It was real as the fear that gripped me every time I recalled those eyes. I tried to get back into my routine, patrolling the familiar trails, but they didn't feel the same. The woods had always been my sanctuary, a place where I felt part of the natural order. Now, they felt different, like I had seen behind a curtain I wasn't supposed to know existed. Each whisper of wind through the leaves sounded like a secret being shared, one that I was now a part of. I couldn't let it go. I had to understand what I had seen. So, I sought out the oldest living soul I knew, a man who had been born in these mountains and knew the stories passed down through generations. He listened to my tale, his eyes never leaving my face. When I finished, there was a long silence, the kind that speaks volumes. "Sam," he said in a voice like gravel rolling down a hillside, "what you saw was a protector, a guardian of the old ways. These mountains are full of spirits, most of them good, but some of them, well, best left alone. You respect the land, and the land will respect you." His words were helpful to my troubled mind. Maybe I hadn't stumbled upon something menacing. Maybe it was simply a guardian, and I had intruded upon sacred ground. I folded up the old map that I had been keeping on my desk and put it away. It was too much in my face as a constant reminder of my encounter. And in case you are wondering, I didn't go looking for those trails again. Instead, I took to heart the lesson that some paths are meant to remain untraveled. As the years passed, I walked only on the well-trodden paths, my respect for the forest growing with each step. I shared my story with a few hikers, those who had that glint of curiosity in their eyes, the kind that could understand. And every time I ventured out, I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me, and I'd nod, acknowledging the guardian of the mountains, offering my silent thanks for allowing me to walk these hills.